welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sarah.
And tournament football has kicked off. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and all of us in between. The Olympic first day of the football has just happened, and it has not disappointed. All 6 games were played, and all 6 contributed to football chaos, madness. Oy, oy, oy. It's going to be a good one. I can feel it.
I just get so happy when tournament football starts. Yesterday, I said countless times out loud, I was like, it starts tomorrow. Do you know what I get to do tomorrow? I get to watch all of the games, and then I get to talk about them. Although, I partly feel like I watched 6 games today, but I also partly don't, because I don't like that I have to divide my attention. I want to have watched 6 games back to back to back to back to back to back, not split screen back to back to back. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm not gonna lie, I quite like it. I like all the games being the same day. I have to say that. I do like the fact that there's not like Group A are playing on this day and Group B are playing on this day. I like the boom, boom, boom.
I don't. I thought I would. I really thought I would, but I don't. I want to like really get my claws into a game. And with this format, I feel like I'm just rushed through it. I'm split screening it. I'm trying to watch both games, but that makes me end up only 50% watching both games. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I still very much enjoyed today. It was the beginning of tournament football. And of course, there's a lot to talk about, Allie. I'm so happy we're back in tournament coverage. It's just so fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm just going to make a claim here. I don't like international break. I love tournament break.
Oh, okay.
The two things are two different things, because before people are like, you hate international break. Yes, I do. Tournaments, however, a whole different ball game.
All right, well, before we get into it today, of course, we are covering match day 1. So we are going to talk Group A, both games. Group B, both games. Group C, both games. That is the format of this episode. Before that, we got a lot of just like general tournament stuff to talk about. And can we just kick it off by saying that in 6 games, none of them went into halftime 0-0. We had goals. We had no draws across the board. 0 draws. You either got 3 points, you got no points today. And a lot of early goals. A goal in the first 15 minutes in both of the first 2 games. New Zealand and Spain scored in the 15th minute. At the same time, Allie and I both texted each other because I was watching Spain and they were watching New Zealand. And we were both like, goal! The U.S. scored in the 17th minute. France scored in the 6th minute. It was just a lot of early goals.
Yep, no, absolutely. Even Brazil scored in the first half, which meant there was no 0-0s at halftime. Like, it was truly a goal fest.
It really was. It really was. And it needs to be noted as well, it was not just a goal fest. It was a card fest, Allie, which I think maybe we can talk about now so we don't have to do it in every single game. 6 games, 6 cards. 4 yellow cards and 2 red cards. The red cards, of course, we are going to get into in the games where those got issued, because we have to.
I'm more shocked at the red cards, because I tend to find that in short tournaments like this, refs tend to be a little bit more lenient because they realise what an effect a red card can have. Not so much in this game. Not in this tournament.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about a yellow card, though. Like, getting a yellow card the first game of group play, that carries far into the tournament. Like, so let me just list the players, because so many key players got these cards. Yaya of Brazil, key midfielder. Caitlin Ford of Australia. Guijarro of Spain. Clara Buell of Germany. Myra Ramirez got a red card. And Zulu of Zambia got a red card. She's the starting center back. Even when we just look at the yellow cards, like Caitlin Ford has to go without any yellow cards throughout the rest of the group stage. That is a tall task.
That is nigh on impossible for Ford. Like, and that is going to affect gameplay, because it's also going to affect whether managers want to play these players in case they get another yellow card. Like, it's going to affect the tournament massively in the second round of games.
All right, and speaking of final piece, talking of managers, we have to say, unfortunately, I feel like we saw more injuries than we wanted to, more injuries than it feels like maybe we should have on the first day. But it it also could be said it's day one, but their 6 games did happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there was obviously some knocks and niggles that players got taken off for. Unfortunately, it looks like there's been 2 major injuries. So Macy Fraser got taken off in the first game against for New Zealand against Canada. It does look like it's her Achilles. She was up and walking, which is a good sign, especially when the dreaded 3 letters. But unfortunately, that is a huge loss for New Zealand. And then Risa Shizumu of Japan went down, and that one looks like the dreaded 3 letters.
It really did. She could not walk off the field on her own, and it did not look good. It also should be noted, Linda Caicedo got injured at the end of the Colombia game, and she was put back onto the field. But if I'm being honest here, I would not be surprised if we saw an unfortunate report come out that something happened, because it did not look good. But for now, everything looks okay, and we'll knock on wood about that. All right, before we get into Group A, we got to do a couple really fun, just general questions, Allie. So first and foremost, because we were texting about some of this, so let's do this. In the lead up, we were talking about teams that were like powerhouses, but we weren't convinced that any team was actually going to show up except for Spain. So now that match day 1 has happened, who were you convinced by, if anyone?
I have to say, I was really convinced by France, because I said, if you listen to my preview of France, you never know which France is going to turn up. Like, is it going to be the one that had the run in the Euros, or is it going to be the one that got beaten by Ireland? And France turned up. Well, at least for one half. We'll get on to that.
I was going to say.
But they were quite convincing, I will say, for France. And I don't know if it was a case of Australia being poor and Germany being not as poor, or if Germany have returned to form, but I thought Germany were pretty on point in the game against Australia.
I would not have said Germany. I watched the Germany-Australia game for whatever I could take of some, because I had to turn it off at about the 70th minute because the commentators were driving me crazy. But that's not what we're here to discuss. I was not convinced by Germany. I, as you know, was watching the USA game, but from what I saw, I can't necessarily say France either, because I only saw the last 25 minutes of France-Colombia when I switched over from USA to the France-Colombia game. But from what you said, it sounded like they were in true top-tier France form, which I'm excited about. For me, Spain were the most convincing, it has to be said. They just looked outstanding, even though they conceded first, and we'll come into that. They looked like the World Cup champions. And listen, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna throw the US in there. I'm sorry, but I'm going to. They looked great. And yes, it was against a team that they were expected to beat, but those 3 goals in the 3-0 win all came before Zambia got that red card, and they were true team goals. So I'm going to put the U.S. in there. Okay, I'm regretting that already. I don't know if they were convincing.
I was going to say, you're saying that was after the red card. Then surely you should have scored after the red card when Zambia went down to 10 men.
Okay, I'm going to go with I'm going to change my answer, please, Judge.
Cautiously optimistic. I'm not trying to like ick your yum and all that. I'm just saying.
Let it also be said that game just ended, and I am still kind of riding a high of like
we won a game.
We won. Okay, I can't really say that they were convincing. I'll talk more about my thoughts on the USA when we come to it. I'm just gonna say Spain from what I saw.
So, 6 incredible high-octane games. Do you have a favorite of the day?
I think it was Japan-Spain. I just love the way those 2 teams match up against each other. It was so exciting. I was just gripped to the TV the whole time.
Yeah, I think for me it has to be France-Colombia. I was, watched first half and I was like, oh yeah, France of old, this is great, poor Colombia. And then Colombia just switched it on me in the second half. And it was, to use that football cliche, it was a game of 2 halves. And it was a beautiful game of football. It genuinely was.
Well, let's get into all of it. To Group A, Canada, New Zealand, France, and Colombia are our Group A teams. And of course, we're going to kick it off with Canada versus New Zealand. And we can't get into the game until we discuss everything that happened in the 48 hours leading up to it, because this was truly, to use this word in its truest sense, unprecedented.
It was Drone Gate, people. We have to talk about it.
Drone Gate.
So, very quickly before we get into that whole saga, firstly, 2 key players were ruled out just before the game kicked off. Ali Riley of New Zealand was taken off at the very last minute due to a nerve injury. We think that's been an ongoing issue for a while. And Michaela Foster was brought in to replace her. And then Jade Riviere of Canada was ruled out right before the match due to an ankle injury. And Zadorsky was then brought in off of the waitlisted players for her. But we don't want to talk about that because we've got to talk about Dronegate. We've got to talk about the saga that was.
It is still an ongoing investigation.
It's still going.
All right, let's get into it because Allie, for everybody who wasn't following on Twitter, because listen, something was breaking every 30 minutes. There was a new piece of news. So frankly, I'd be surprised if anybody really was fully up to date. So let's do it. Let's break it down, beginning of the story until where we are now. What is Dronegate and what happened?
So, 48 hours before the game was due to kick off, New Zealand launched an official complaint with the International Olympic Committee that Canada had used a drone to spy on their training session before the match. Canada denied it originally. Then it came out that they said, okay, it was the assistant coaches, Joseph Lombardi.
I didn't know they denied it initially.
Oh, yeah.
That is not something I caught.
They
wow.
denied it initially, but then it came out that Joseph Lombardi and Jasmine Manda were involved in it. So they got fired and sent back. Lombardi, if you guys don't know, is an accredited analyst with Canada Soccer, and Jasmine Manda is an assistant coach to who Lombardi reports to. So that's huge. Lombardi has received a suspended sentence, that's a prison sentence, of 8 months for doing this, for using illegal use of a drone without a license, as well as what is technically espionage, because it is a governing body spying on another governing body.
That's the part that got to me, where I was just like, people are making jokes about it, but somebody's going to prison for 8 months for spying on New Zealand's training session. And I'm sorry, I understand how technically that is espionage, but it is not espionage. That is insane. The whole thing is ridiculous. And then beyond that, there were just layers popping up here and there. For example, listen, I haven't gotten to fully fact check this, so I'm going to outright say that, but it needs to be noted because this is a ridiculous piece of information if it is true. Jasmine Mander's brother, so Jasmine Mander's the assistant coach, remember, who Lombardi is the one with the prison sentence, reports to. And it seems like Jasmine Mander's brother, Amar Mander, is the team physiotherapist for, you guessed it, the New Zealand women's national team. And that's a little too fishy to not be true.
Yeah, that is crazy. So Bev Priestman, who's the coach of Canada, was asked directly if she knew what was going on. She said no, that it was two rogue employees, but she removed herself from the sideline for this upcoming game against New Zealand because she feels like she should have known about it. I think the craziest thing for me is the statement where Canada apologised for spying on New Zealand twice, and New Zealand went, wait, what? We only caught you once.
I know. I was going back through it and I was like, wait, I only heard about it happening once. What?
Yeah, completely told on themselves, Canada, because New Zealand was like, wait, no, we only caught you once. What do you mean twice?
To be honest, though, the craziest part for me, because we're talking about Bev, she was asked about it directly in a press conference. She was asked point blank, did you know about this? And never, when you look at the transcript, never does she say, no, I did not know about this. Now, does that imply guilt? Not necessarily, because there could always be a moment where Bev feels so guilty. Oh, everybody works for me. This could be, in theory, my fault, even though I didn't know about it. But this is no moment to be a hero. If you did not know about it, say it. Because everybody now believes, Bev, that you know about it because you did not outright say that. So, listen, there's an investigation happening right now that should turn everything up. New Zealand also went to FIFA because FIFA is also technically like a governing body of this specific tournament as well, along with the Olympic Committee. So they are both investigating. We all know about, FIFA investigations. I don't know how much to trust them, but that it is something that is being investigated. However, Bev will be back on the sideline for Canada's next game. I'm very disappointed. I feel like if this comes out that Bev had played a role in it, I feel very swindled because I just feel like I've been led to believe that she was not somebody that would do this, but that's based on no information because I've obviously never met her.
Yeah, no, the last thing that came out is that New Zealand have asked that, and they asked this before the game happened, but if Canada were to win, they wanted the 3 points stripped from them so that they would gain nothing from this match. Not necessarily that New Zealand would gain the 3 points, just that Canada would have the 3 points stripped. So we're yet to
I think that's fair.
We are yet to hear whether that's been agreed to, especially based on today's result. But that was the last thing we've heard in Germany.
What a good transition. So let's get into it. Canada did win. They did take the 3 points. 2-1 was the final score, Canada. Allie, we were watching different games at this time. You were watching Canada, New Zealand. I had it split screen, so I did see some of it, but you were really in it. So let's start with you. What were your thoughts on both of these teams' performances?
I mean, neither of them were well-beaten performances, I'm going to be honest. I thought that New Zealand had a great back line. I know they ended up losing in the end, but there were so many shots that Canada had that got stomped out by Stott and CJ Bott. And Barry, my goodness, did she have a game. Not only did she get New Zealand's one goal, but she was throwing her body on the line to stop Canada breaking through. So I felt like the backline for New Zealand was great. They just were really sloppy when it came to their passing forward and getting the ball up to hand and things like that. And Canada just didn't know what to do with breaking down this defence. They didn't know what to do. Like, they have got some insane talent on there. They brought on Janine Becky. They had Adrian Leon for the entire game. You had all this like amazing scoring talent. Quinn was up there trying to get something. There was just so much, and they just couldn't. And it looked like a very tired Canada. And I don't know if the events we just spoke about has played some mind games with them, and they haven't really, because it looked like they could have been kicked out of the tournament entirely, and that I think. But they grew slightly into the game, but it wasn't Canada at their best defending their title.
I will say, well, there's two things to say about this. First and foremost, I think the one thing we forgot to mention in relation to the drone incident is these players, because they are the unfortunate collateral damage in all of this. They did not ask for this. They are the ones really who have been villainized. Everybody's now rooting against them. It probably has impacted them. But the second thing to say is, this isn't surprising. We talked about Canada in the lead up to this tournament, and we talked about how we saw how affected they've been since this huge battle with their federation began and how it's affected them on the field. In She Believes, in the World Cup, in any game since the World Cup, what we just saw from Canada is exactly what we've been seeing from them for the past year. And if I were to categorize this game in one word, it would just be slow. And if I were to look at Group A, Canada, New Zealand, and then the other game was France, Colombia, I think I'm sitting pretty high on my predictions here that that it's going to go France, Colombia, Canada, New Zealand, because Canada did not show well. When you think, like you said, Allie, when you look at who they have and what they could do, it's not there. Versus, this was a great performance from New Zealand.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Like I said, defensively, they were fantastic. They need to work on their transition up the field because there were so many loose balls that didn't quite make it. I don't want to blame the weather conditions, but Allie did look like she had the sun in her eyes for most of the game. So therefore, her distribution wasn't great, because anybody who follows the WSL saw that she took over as the main keeper for Aston Villa with Van Domselaar's injury, and her distribution is normally quite good. It was not fantastic in this game, and her defenders got her out of trouble a fair few times, but she made some great saves and kept it at 2-1, which means the goal difference isn't that bad. So if they do manage to pull something out against either France or Colombia, their hopes are not dashed.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Other Group A game. France versus Colombia. This was one of the two final games of the day. Listen, it didn't start off a good one, but it ended a really good one. France beat Colombia 3-2. This was wild, Allie. I tuned in, as I mentioned at the top of this, around the 70th minute-ish, because you were texting me, oh, it's a runaway for France. It's a runaway for France, because France were up 3-0. And I was like, glad I didn't, stop watching the U.S. for that. And then Allie's like, oh, Colombia got one back. I'm like, okay. And then Allie's like, it's 3-2. Turn the game on.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Now, you said it was the cliche, a game of two halves. I really want to speak to the second half that I could really watch. But first and foremost, let's talk about that first half then. Let's talk about France and also on the flip side, Colombia. But let's start with France because I think let's just do that. Instead of going halves, let's go team by team. Let's talk about France first, Allie.
Yeah, so France come out the gate for the first half and absolutely smash it. Like we said, within 6 minutes, Kitoto came out and got a glorious goal. It was a unprecedented mistake from Linda Casero, and she latched onto it and got her head to it and scored a beautiful goal at 6 minutes. And we really have France have missed Kitoto so much because she was out with that ACL for so long and has been out injured for so long. And she and Dali were such bright sparks for this France team. And it did feel like it was France of old. They were absolutely running Colombia off the park. They were just brilliant link up. They play that, full team goal game, that tic-tac sort of play where every player gets a touch, and it was a beautiful first half, and they got 3 goals within 20 odd minutes, and you think, right, that's it, that's France done.
Yeah, you said to me they looked like the France of old. So what shifted in the second half? Or was it really nothing from France? Was it something that Colombia changed?
I think it's a bit of the both, to be honest. I think Colombia probably got the yelling of their life, at the halftime talk, because they were poor first half. There is no getting away with it. As good as France were, Colombia were poor. They weren't making runs. They weren't talking to each other. They weren't connecting. It seemed to be either Caicedo or Ramirez, and that was it. And they just weren't playing each other well. The other thing I think happened was France got complacent, because you go in at halftime with a 3-0 lead. You're like, this is it. Perfect. I've done it. This is our 3 points. So the first Colombia goal was a penalty, and it was a stone cold penalty. You watch that back, you can't argue with that. It was a clip on the Achilles in the penalty box of Ramirez. Yes, it was last ditch defending, but it was a bad tackle. So that was a red card all day. Not red card all day, but it was a penalty all day. That was a penalty all day.
I was just going to say, but it wasn't a red card. And somehow Ramirez got red carded for something very similar that wasn't in the box. I think you painted a really great picture of this game. I think when I turned it on, I was I was kind of taken aback by the amount of energy I could almost feel coming through the TV from Colombia. They grabbed this game by the scruff of the neck and they just took it to France, and they put under pressure a center back that will go down in history as one of the best to play, but also one that doesn't have the same type of pace that she used to have in Wendy Renard. And when you match up somebody like Myra Ramirez against Wendy Renard, I take Myra Ramirez almost every time. I take her against almost anybody almost every time. She is truly that good. And Colombia are so different. We talked about this again in the lead up to this tournament. They are so different when they have her and when they don't have her. And the question around Colombia coming into this tournament was, are they going to be Colombia of the World Cup, or are they going to kind of fall off like we've seen them do since then? And it really, in the first half, looked like it was going to be the latter. And they fully turned it around and showed everybody just why they were such tournament darlings last year, because that was quite the performance in the second half. And yeah, we don't have to get into it about the red card, whether it was, whether it wasn't, whether it shouldn't be. But the matter of fact statement is they're not going to have Myra Ramirez in the next game because of that red card. And that matters. All right, next Group A matchups. Sunday are the next games, everybody. It's New Zealand versus Colombia and France versus Canada.
France and Canada are locked in together at 3 points each. New Zealand and Colombia have 0 points, but the goal difference is tight, so these games will make a huge difference on the standings. Over to Group B, and the first game of this group was Germany versus Australia. Now, Sarah, you were watching this one for the most part until the commentators drove you off. But let's talk about it because it was a 3-0 win for Germany over Australia. From the bits and pieces I have seen, it looks like very well deserved by Germany, and Australia had a moment.
Yeah. Listen, one of the things that was said on the commentary was that Australia have never beaten Germany. Maybe it's in their head. I don't think that's what happened whatsoever. This was a weird game. There's no other way to phrase it. This was a very weird game. Australia, I really do think that, first of all, this scoreline flatters Germany, not because they didn't dominate Australia, because they did, but it felt like a game in which, Australia just couldn't find a flow at all. It was almost hard to watch because it was a team that just couldn't get into it. It was like watching the U.S. at the peak frustration of watching the U.S. where they just didn't know what to do with the ball. That's almost how it seemed with Australia. And in our, we talked about a little bit in our group chat about how Australia took a lot of players that are nursing some injuries here and there, and maybe they don't have everybody 100% across the field. And that has to be a part of it because they looked slow. They couldn't find the flow. And Germany, yes, they dominated the ball. Australia couldn't find a counterattack. But on the other hand, this was not a game that exploited the fact that Oberdorf was missing for Germany. Germany know how to work the ball around. They know how to keep possession. The massive ad that is Lena Oberdorf is what she does defensively, and they were not challenged in that capacity today. So that's why I didn't include them on the list of a team that I am convinced by, because I'm kind of not. They still had the ball, but there was no urgency. There was no urgency in front of the goal. It was just still kind of slow for Germany. That's why it was just a weird one. It was a weird game. Germany absolutely deserved this win, but I'm not convinced by it.
Yeah, Australia need to work on defending their set pieces because 2 of the goals came from the same type of set piece.
Yeah, well, listen. If you're Germany, you're probably going to score on a set piece. And if you're watching a game that features Germany, you're probably going to expect them to. The Tillies, a lot of what they were able to do, I think, in the World Cup and beyond that, just historically, the Matildas have always been a team that score more than they let in. They've never been a defense first team. And what happened here is the attack broke down and it just left the weaker defense fully exposed. We've all said multiple times across many years that center back pairing is just not the strongest in the international game. And Germany went after it and they did a great job of it.
And then the other Group B match, which I know you've probably got a lot to talk about, which was the USA versus Zambia. The USA took it 3-0. They scored all of their goals in the first half, including a beautiful one from Trinity Rodman, as well as Mal Swanson's brace. Let's get into it.
Oh, it was tasty.
Let's talk about it, because there was another controversy.
Have you seen a replay of Trin's goal?
Yes, I have.
Because Trinity Rodman...
Yes, I have, because...
gorgeous.
Luckily, the streaming service I use are showing the highlights of both games if you're watching the other one. So it is...
Shall we take a moment and shout that streaming service out, by the way, for anybody in the UK listening that is like, I don't get any of these games on the BBC. How are you watching it, Allie?
Yes, just quick shout out. All of these games are available on Discovery Plus. And if you have an Amazon account, you can add it to your Amazon Prime account for an additional, £4 a month. You'll need to spend a tenner for the whole tournament, but it's worth it. Also, if you have Sky or cable, then you can also add it to that as well. But it's not on free to air.
10 for the whole tournament's not bad whatsoever.
No, it is not. It's definitely the games I saw today paid for itself.
Back to USA Zambia. 3-0 US, as you mentioned. I was in the middle of musing over Trinity Rodman's goal, which was the first for the US. And then Mal Swanson had a brace, as you mentioned. 2 goals came back to back for each. I'm not looking at the exact stats, but it had to be within 2 minutes. She scored.
If your
2
texts
goals.
are anything to go by,
gorgeous,
because it was Swanson.
And then it should be noted that was it. That was it. There were no goals scored after Zambia's red card. So I think it's easiest maybe to go chronologically here, because I also want to talk about Zambia. I don't just want to focus on the U.S., but let's do the U.S. first. it was a strong start to the game. I think I can speak for a lot of US fans when I say we tuned in optimistically, but also a little trepidatious and like, what is going to happen here? Because we don't know. Because it's a new era. That was Emma Hayes' 5th game on the sideline for the U.S. Women's National Team ever, just period. And it's not the fact that they won 3-0. It's not even the fact that Swanson got a brace. It's how those 3 goals came that gives me massive hope for how the U.S. will perform in the rest of the tournament. They looked so dynamic. Every goal was a team goal. They were opening up the midfield. The problem with the last game against Costa Rica is that the midfield was kind of non-existent, and it was just a huge reliance on the front 3. And this was a team game. It was all 3 goals were team goals. I don't have to harp on it. I just thought it was a strong performance for the U.S. And if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking, yeah, but it was against Zambia, let's give some credit where credit is due. Zambia are not a team. Nobody is a team that can be walked over. Like, if you hear Emma Hayes talk nowadays, she basically says part of the issue is that the U.S. believe that they can come in and walk over teams here and there, and that just simply doesn't happen anymore in the international
I'm so glad
game.
she said that. Like, I'm so glad she said that, because there was this air of, I think that's why so many people were shocked at your downfall, and I use downfall in air quotes, because you did have that air of, we could beat anybody on any given day, and then you didn't. But Zambia, for me, are an exciting team to watch. They have got pace for days. I feel like the red card was super unlucky. It is a stupid rule about this last defender nonsense. And I felt so bad for her.
I wanted to turn the game off in that moment. Like, my heart was just breaking. And for anybody who didn't see, quite simply, it was outside the box, and Zulu, one of the center backs for Zambia, barely tripped up Sophia Smith, and I believe was issued a yellow card to begin with. The ref went to VAR. Everybody thought that he went to VAR to see if it was in the box or outside of the box, and instead he came back out, changed the yellow card to a red card, and it was immediate tears from Zulu. I almost started crying on the couch. It's just one of those things that it felt like the punishment didn't fit the crime, and it changed the whole game. And I mean, I didn't want to watch the rest of the game after that, because you want a competitive game. And when you do that, it just makes it uncompetitive. I will say this, because I had the pleasure of writing, I write for All for 11, and I had the pleasure of writing a group preview for Zambia like 2 days ago. So I feel like it's fresh in my mind. Zambia's strength is their counterattack. It's their offense. It's what they can do catching the other team off guard. Their weakness is the fact that their back line is very, very young, which is what we just saw. A foul that really she didn't mean to commit, and then now you've got to go in when it's already your weakness, and now it's kind of been pointed out to the rest of the world that, hey, also this starting center back isn't playing. It's just going to make things even harder for Zambia. And yeah, I feel for them. I really do.
The next Group B matchups are USA versus Germany and Australia versus Zambia.
All right now, USA and Germany locked on 3 points each. Zambia and Australia locked on 0 points each. So this is going to tell us a lot in those next games.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
And finally, to the Group C games. These were quite intense and very different from each other, but both quite highly entertaining. We're going to take it off with Sarah's game of the tournament so far, which was Spain versus Japan. Japan. It ended 2-1 to Spain, but they did go down 1 goal first. So let's bring it on. What happened in this game?
This is so fun. I mean, I had this circled I think we all did, right? Because this is a rematch. These two teams faced each other twice in the World Cup. They each took 1 game. And now a rematch a year later, less than a year later, here in the Olympics. And these two teams are now teams that we can say are really starting to get to know each other well. Oh my gosh, where to even begin? Well, Japan shocked us all by going up 1-0 to kick it off. And I really did think, oh my goodness, are we repeating the World Cup group stage where Japan took it to Spain? However, Japan did start strong, but right when they went up 1-0, it's like something kicked in for Spain and they went full high press. They took it to a whole new level and put Japan really under pressure in Japan's own defensive third. And frankly, for the rest of the game, Japan had a really hard time breaking down that high press. And it led to a lot of Spain's opportunities. And frankly, 2-1 is pretty flattering to Japan. Yes, they played really well, but for the number of opportunities that Spain had versus what Japan had, it's incredible. Like, Japan were lucky to have one extremely dangerous opportunity in that second half, and Spain had countless, really. And that seemed to be the difference maker. I was really watching a game and seeing like, okay, Japan have 2 options now. They can play that counterattack, which is really how they were able to beat Spain last year in the World Cup. And they were playing that counterattack, but it wasn't really leading to anything really extremely dangerous, if that makes sense. And then anytime they tried to build out of the back, which would have been the second option to break down Spain with some quick passes out of the back, that was not working either. And that was really the story of this entire game. Japan never did really score in the run of play, but that free kick was a masterpiece, one of just pure beauty, and deserves the props as well, I have to say. It doesn't matter to me that they didn't score in the run of play, because that goal for Japan, brava.
Would you very quickly say that it looked a bit like Japan of old, which is that low block, very defensive style, but you don't know where the goals are coming from? Are they missing Endo, basically?
Well, they're definitely missing Endo, because what Endo provided is another element on that counterattack, right? Japan know how to work the ball around. They know how to keep Spain moving from side to side, and then they would just get stuck trying to break through the midfield line. So Endo added that element to the counterattack that could have helped open up the high press from Spain, because they would have had to back off and cover that counterattack. So in short, yes. I thought Japan's defense, this kind of plays into the number of chances that Spain had. Japan's defense held up phenomenally. And we know that this is a team that does not concede a lot of goals. They're strong defensively. And they really showed it here. And on the flip side, if we want to talk about where there's a weak spot for Spain, because there is, everybody's has one, no matter how strong they look, it has to be in the goalkeeper position of Katakol, who was caught coming off of her line and out of the 18 2 times. Both times, it could have been detrimental. Japan absolutely could have scored both of those goals. She is, without a doubt, a weak spot for Spain. And if I was another team watching that performance, I would say hit those balls into a difficult position that will force her out of her net and see how she handles them. All right, and finally, let's talk Brazil-Nigeria. This is a very interesting one, Allie, so I'm excited to get into this with you. This is the final game that we're going to get to talk about here. Is the final game for group stage match day 1. Brazil took it 1-0. I feel like there were a lot of question marks around Brazil going into this game, so I was watching for pure, like, what are they going to look like? And I want answers to that. Allie, what did you make of this game?
I'm still left with questions about Brazil, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
This was...
Me too.
It became an interesting game, but I feel like that was more Nigeria's play than it was Brazil, despite them losing. Because obviously Brazil took it 1-0. But I don't know what happened with Brazil, to be honest. It was...
In this game, or like in general?
But specifically in this game, they were so sloppy until they got that goal, and Nigeria were really opening up on that right-hand side. Like, absolutely, they had nothing. They had nothing going on that right-hand side, and Nigeria was completely opening up. And their game plan seemed to be fall over. That seemed to be their game plan, was to just, a Nigerian player would breathe on them and they'd fall over. And it was so...
It was a sloppy, ugly game like that,
so
for
stop-start. It was so ridiculous. Marta got a goal that got called offside quite rightly. That was a good, starting point. I think that off-footed Nigeria, which allowed Brazil to score an absolute... I'm going to be honest, give it to them. It was a cracker of a goal that they did get.
It was
beautiful. But
Marta got the assist.
But I don't think it says very much about Brazil. Again, we've talked about powerhouse. We've talked about Brazil are one of the most successful non-winning teams, if that makes sense. They've reached the most semi-finals and third-place matches of any team in Olympic women's history to never actually get the gold. And I don't think that this is not proving that they're going to do it this time around.
Here was my question for Brazil coming into this game, and then we'll touch on Nigeria too, but I feel like Nigeria played how we assumed Nigeria would play. Like, we know the Super Falcons, and that was a Super Falcon game. I think the reason we're focusing on Brazil is because there's more question marks around Brazil. So many reasons. We have talked about the transition from head coach Pia Sontag, who was fired after the big collapse of Brazil in the World Cup last year, and the bringing on of Arthur Elias, who is a coach who spent his entire career in specifically the women's club game within Brazil. And we've talked about how the changes that he's been making are to bring on more club players who play their club soccer in Brazil. And we've talked about that as a huge positive. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not. It is. But I think that there's also... It's two sides of the coin, because what he's done is not just bring on a few standout players. He's brought on a slew of players. He coached the team Corinthians. 1/3 of the full 18-person roster of Brazil are Corinthians players. And they are there instead of players like Jace, instead of a player like Debinha, Bruinha. None of them are here with Brazil. And so it felt like a very intentional shift from Elias. For the reasons, we don't really know what the reasons are. I can sit here and say, it seems like, from what I can tell from Brazil, they have historically been a team that wins because of individual talent, and there's no group play. And we talk so much about how Brazil need a structure in which they can operate, but still have freedom and creativity. And that's what they need. And it seems like the direction he's taking it is to say we're moving so far away from individualism. We're going all the way over to team. And the question for me is, did he go too far? Can you win a major tournament while leaving off some of maybe objectively the best players on your roster, right? Can that happen? And that was my big question going into this game, and that's what I wanted to see from them. And again, like you said, we didn't really get answers.
You need balance. You do need that balance. We talk about it. Marta got the start. She actually was a really bright spark for Brazil. You know, she's everything. Marta's showing the reason why she is going to go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, footballer. I'm going to say male or female. Marta is something special. And she still got it at 39 years of age. She was tearing Nigeria apart. She was getting the assists. She was getting into space. She was doing all the things we know Marta can do. But the question has to be asked, would she be starting or would she be a super sub if he had brought in that international talent of Jace, who we saw do so much in the World Cup? You know, Debinha, would you get started? I'd say probably, but she would have more to play with. At the moment, it does feel like Marta is bringing up the youth team.
This is not to say, I think we both probably, you tell me if you agree with this. This is not to say that there aren't stars still on this team. Gavi Nunez, for example, who scored that banger of a goal. I've talked a lot about Duda Sampaio, who is a key midfielder. Yaya, who's a key midfielder. She is on a yellow. We already mentioned her before. I mean, how many times do we need to say how important Rafaela is to this team? She is everything. She holds down that back line. There's a reason she is the captain. But yes, still questions remain for me about what this Brazilian team really looks like when under pressure for a long time. And time will tell. We will get our answers. I think potentially Elias is trying to incentivize people to play their club soccer in Brazil to help grow the game there. That's also me reading into things. Again, not necessarily bad or good. It has both positives and negatives to it. All in all, Brazil got the win. I think that they were very deserving of the win in terms of play, but I am not convinced. Would you agree?
No, I would agree. I think it's going to be a real test to see them play Spain and Japan, because they will challenge them in a very different way than Nigeria challenged them. And that's when we'll be able to see if what Ilias has done is too much too soon, or if he's actually got it right and we don't know what we're talking about.
Well, no, that's the thing. I just want to clarify. Like, I'm not saying that what he did is wrong. I'm saying that it is aggressive. It was a big shift. It's like he went from one side all the way to the other without stopping in the middle. I kind of assumed he would go from far one side, stop in the middle, and that's where we'd be in the Olympics, and then he could take it from there. But he went one side all the way to the other. It's a drastic, quick shift is all I'm saying. And I'm just saying time will tell. I am definitely not here saying that it was a bad idea. It was the riskier move, 100%, for his job's sake, for winning's sake. But we all know that could have paid off.
So the next Group C matchups are Spain versus Nigeria and Brazil versus Japan.
Woo-wee. Okay, so standings as we speak. Spain sits in number 1 because of goal differential. They scored 2. Brazil scored 1. Brazil sit in second, and then Japan, and then Nigeria in 4th. Once again, this is going to determine a lot. Brazil versus Japan might determine who goes second and who ends up third.
So that is it from us at the Women's Soccer Show. The next matches are Sunday, which means our next episode will be dropping on Monday. So make sure you check where you get your podcasts. Make sure you are following us on socials, which is at The Woso Show. Make sure you check out our Patreon. There's still some really good stuff on there with extended interviews and everything else.
And for us here at the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.